of comedians in bed where comedians can be comedians. I don't know why, but that sounds like something you should say on a podcast. But as you already know, I got another great guest for you, man. I'm so excited that he's here. He doesn't know this, but I listened to him plenty of times going to school, not really wanting to go to school on the Tom Joyner Morning Show. So it's such a great pleasure to have him here on our podcast here today. The very funny, the very talented Damon Williams, everybody. How you doing today, man?
Man, doing great, brother. Doing great. And I'm sorry that your parents forced you to listen to great radio and excellent music.
Nah, man, my dad, like he's that's all he listened to old school music. That's how I got into kind of how I got into radio and TV was listening to the Tom Jordan Morning Show actually. So I loved it. I wish we had more like radio shows like that. Only thing we got now is like the Breakfast Club and Ricky Smiley show.
Yeah, there's Steve Harvey and Russ Parr, but nothing really but amount to what Tom Joyner's impact was and his reach, not only to the audience, but like corporate structure. And like if we had issues back in the day, we could go to the Tom Joyner Morning Show and talk to Pepsi or General Motors or companies like that. So he had that plus the entertainment aspect of having set the mold with the young lady, Sybil's voice being the voice of reason, Tom being the anchor, and Jay being the comic. So that little mode has been around. They set that motto, and it's been a great thing ever since.
And you know what I really loved about it was the McDonald's like Black History fact of the day. I don't know why,
Yeah,
but I really like looked to it because like I don't know, like we're from the Midwest, but like here in Ohio, they don't really teach us a lot about like our history and stuff like that. So I learned
right.
more like on there than I would in a classroom.
Yeah, little known Black history fact. And actually, that's been continued. Sybil Wilkes from Tom Joyner Morning Show has a newsletter, and we do a podcast or a broadcast every Monday through Friday. I'm on Tuesdays, and they do on her newsletter. It's Sybil. You can get that little known Black history fact every day.
Okay,
So,
yeah, that's
yep,
what's up, huh?
yeah, and
I'll
it's
be
free.
seeing,
Go online and find SybilWilkes.com.
I'll be seeing your videos and stuff, and you always got this flag. Like, why is this flag so important to you? It never goes without you.
Hey man, when I first saw it, because it just represents, man. Literally, we are an American, we are African American, so it's got our colors plus the American flag combined, and it just says I'm flexing my blackness, black awareness. And when I do corporate Zooms and things of that nature, I'll be sitting there just like this with the black and flag. So I had one Marine radical ass dude online. He saw me on Twitter or something. He was like, "What's that rag on your wall?" And I said, "It signifies the contributions of African Americans to this country." Any other questions? Shut them
Yeah.
down. Yeah.
No, I love it, man. I love it. Like there's so many flags out there. I love that. I love that we're getting more into like representing, where we come from, not like embarrassed about it. So I love to see it.
Yeah, plus, like, what really made me go flag crazy was here in Chicago, Cinco de Mayo, man, and Mexican Independence Day. Both of those days, the Mexican population. Now, we might not have a legit Mexican population of this size, but when the holidays roll around, the flags everywhere on the bumpers of the head of the cars, on the hood, hanging out the window. And I'm like, for Juneteenth, we should get our flag game up, So that's when I
Yeah.
bought this flag, and to this point, I'm gonna keep representing with my fight the power.
No, I definitely understand. I was there, not probably like not this year, but like last year, I think. And we came during Mexican Heritage Month. I had no idea that that was a thing, but they had the streets lined up. I mean, they was blowing off fireworks stuff, sound like real bombs. I'm like, man, they don't play down here. It's packed.
Yeah, it's a thing.
Yeah, I definitely understand. Chicago is very segregated, but I've never experienced it growing up from Chicago. How was that and how is it now, seeing that it's still segregated?
It is certainly still segregated. My community. I mean, on my block though, we have like a melting pot because the white people that live here can't afford to move, and then and then the one next door actually, his son is a registered sex offender, white guy. So they probably had to move to the black community because white people wouldn't let them. There's true stories, man. Then I got a Mexican neighbor across the street, my man Frank. He's a great neighbor, but he's super observant. Like whenever I do anything, he know. Like my wife pulls out the driveway and her car squeaks. She's like, she might need some new pads. He'll text me. I just heard your wife pull off. I'm like, dude, it's cool that you observant, because he watching, but he's also super extra involved.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's a melting pot around here because it's an older community. I'm out in the
That's
south suburb.
that's like my biggest like fear with like getting a house or a condo, like neighbors being like too close and too like personal. Like an apartment, you at least got some space. The only thing they'll hear is like if you're making too much noise. But other than that, like when you get like a whole house or something like that, like everybody's watching. That kind of scare me a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting, man, because it used to be like community and was a good thing, but now people don't really speak to their neighbors like that. But you need a couple of nosy neighbors, man, especially if you don't want to pay for ADT. So I got the alarm and Frank, so I'm good.
I always thought about like getting like stealing somebody's ADT sign and just putting it in my yard just to scare people away.
That sign is very powerful, man. It's potent.
Yeah.
I know a couple people that you get the stickers on the windows and the sign. They like, why bother? Just go to the house that don't have the sign.
It makes so much sense, man.
Unless it's somebody that's really trying to get at you. Most people that burglarize you is somebody
Yeah.
because they don't take a chance to go in a random house and they don't know what's in a random house. So usually it's somebody led in your house, they have seen some of your things. I mean, don't ask me how I know this, but I'm just telling you. I know a lot of times burglars are people you know.
No,
Yeah.
I had a one of my exes. She had her house that got broken into like a couple days before we broke up, and like she was just like, "Yeah, I think it was my neighbor across the street." She always give me funny looks. I'm like, "That don't even make no sense. It got to be somebody you know." And then she was like, "Yeah, they stole my necklace that my grandma gave me." I'm like, and I'm supposed to believe this is all from your neighbor across the street that just gave you a dirty look. I'm like, that's
No,
not even a good lie.
no, that's her cousin that the grandma didn't get a necklace to. That's who did it.
Oh man, doing comedy in Chicago, like I feel like it's one of the biggest scenes in America. Sometimes it gets slighted on, when people compare it to New York and LA. How is doing comedy in Chicago, especially right now since everything is changing in the comedy game with like reels and content? How is it doing comedy in Chicago?
Well, comedy in Chicago is traditional, man. It's been around. We launched careers and birthed some of the greatest in the game ever. I mean, to be honest, Dick Gregory's career started here at the Playboy Club. He was the first African American to be on a network talk show and sit down at the couch and have a conversation and do the jokes. Um, so that was amazing. But then it dates back to, even on the not just African Americans like Bernie Mac and Adele Givens and, people that nature. Red Fox is really born in St. Louis, but he's from Chicago. If you look at the Malcolm X book, he was Chicago Red. He used to hang with Malcolm X when they moved to New York. And Malcolm X was Detroit Red. They used to call Red Fox Chicago Red. But then you got the contemporaries that are doing really big things out of here, like Lil Rel and Deion Cole and D-Ray and Corey and, Craig Robinson, and the list goes on and on and on. And then you got people like Belushi that's from here. You go back to Second City, which launched a lot of people on Saturday Night Live. So it's really a mecca of comedy, one of the best markets, and it's the best place to do it because it's a microcosm of people. The West Coast has the energy, the East Coast has the energy. We're in the Midwest. We have a mixture of like Southern roots plus big city vibe, and no nonsense people. So if you're funny, you're funny. If you're not, they'll let you know. And it's a beautiful place, man. And like we nurture generationally, we've nurtured our African American comedies down the line. My man George Wilborn was my mentor. Bernie Mac was our mentor. And when you come from a lineage like that, and then you pass it down, that's how you get the D-Rays and the rest in peace Marcus Combs and so many others.
Man, I really want to do because I went to school for journalism for a little bit, and I really want to do like a documentary on like coming to Chicago and finding like a 1 hour special on Bernie Mac. Like, is there one that exists? Like, we always just see like the Kings of Comedy, which is great, but we've never, at least I've never personally seen like where he's just standing up there for a whole hour. Does it exist?
Actually, there's an album his family is releasing, but it's audio
Okay.
that's coming out. It's being released soon. There's a documentary in place. There's a 30-minute documentary on him that Comedy Central, I think, did. Actually, I'm in the very beginning of it because we were on the Kings of Comedy tour, and he brought the camera crew past and intentionally stopped and gave me a little dap, gave me my little shout out without a shout out, and I never forget that. Bernie, I had his respect. He was about to do a tour and film it, and that was going to be his special and his retirement from stand-up. This is a conversation I had with him personally. I was going to host, actually. and we were going to go out on the road, do the tour. He was going to bring a band, a music artist, and like he did before. And he said it was going to be his retirement for stand-up. He was also working on a pilot for another sitcom, but he took ill, and all of that went away. But there is no definitive 1 hour special, but the closest you'll get to it is Walter Latham's page. He has all of the Kings of Comedy stuff, and it's very different sets. It's not like he did the same thing. Sometimes Bernie will be, just freestyling, and I could tell the difference.
Yeah.
And at one time, there's one particular one where he has on the big brim because his luggage and stuff got lost, and he had on his golf gear. So he's an avid golfer, so he had on the big golf hat and the polo shirt, and he talked about that. So that was freestyle. But it's really tragic that we don't have the definitive 1 hour Bernie Mac special.
Yeah. Why did he want to retire?
Well, I mean, he had been doing it, but when Bernie came out on Def Jam in the early 90s, he had already been in the game probably 10, 15 years, in the Chitlin circuit bouncing around. So once you get your shot and then you make it to network TV, then you're in movies with George Clooney and Brad Pitt, the road is a different thing. And I think once the Kings of Comedy validated and solidified him as a great in the game, he didn't really need to do stand-up anymore. And it's way more lucrative when you got a sitcom, and that show was working him to death, literally. And I don't even mean to say that, but he worked himself tirelessly to get to syndication for that show, to get those 100 episodes or however many he had. And so, it's a different thing. I would never personally retire. And I recommend any comedian now that gets a stand-up following, and then you go on to sitcoms and television and film, to never stop hitting that mic, because that can go away any minute, but the people will always be there. And people like Eddie Murphy right now really wants to do this, but the work involved in getting back into it versus staying in it is tricky. Yeah. Especially when the expectations would be so high for him to come out. But you could tell, like, he just did an acceptance speech for the Griot Awards, and you could tell he's got some bits he's ready to drop. When he got his acceptance speech, when he won that award at the Kennedy Center, I forgot what it was for, but he does little stuff. It's inklings of him wanting to get out here. So he just needs to trust himself. And I'll let him come to Chicago and Riddles, and we can have a private setting where he can just work on his stuff on no phones, no cameras, and he can do like 8 shows, and then he'll be polished.
Yeah.
I'll put that out there.
So many people I talk to, they talk about moving to New York or talk about LA, but us being from the Midwest, I've been thinking about it like, let's just stay here in the Midwest, because first of all, the plane tickets are cheaper. You don't have to go all the way from New York to LA or whatever. But more importantly, like, I feel like Chicago has a good scene. I feel like it gets overlooked a lot when it comes to the bigger scenes, and now Austin popping up, so everybody's talking about Austin, as nobody's talking about Chicago, at least from the circles, conversations that I'm having. So why should someone move to Chicago to do comedy? And if you're trying to move into a scene, like a bigger scene like that, how do you get your foot into the door?
Well, the beautiful thing about the Chicago circuit is it's very welcoming. I mean, this current younger generation, I've seen them starting to bicker more on social media and compete and be, kind of crabbish. But it's really, first of all, you have the variety. With the segregation comes the different audiences. You know what I mean? So if you want to go up north, if you want to work on your white jokes, you know what I'm saying, you can stay out south if you work on your urban, so-called urban material. And then sometimes it crossovers and overlaps. Mary Lindsay was real good at getting some of the north side eyeballs to come to the south, and also bring industry up here. But there's industry here. There's film and television here. It's a major metropolitan city. It's a wide variety of stage time available. So you come here to learn to do it, and you go there to succeed at it. And so a lot of people, or most of my contemporaries, moved out, chase stardom. I stayed here because I considered Chicago a very viable market as a promoter and producer of shows. And I could eat off Chicago without ever leaving, to be honest. And I've been here doing it over 30 years. But I also venture out to those places. Atlanta's another place that has a vibrant comedy scene and more film and television with what's going on with Tyler Perry and other things like that. So, you don't have to just be in New York or LA anymore. Austin is an entertainment situation. Nashville has a situation. Memphis even has, entertainment stages. And then there's Vegas. So Chicago is right on par with all of them. Like I say, there are major club chains here: Zanies, Improv. I have Riddles Comedy Club. We're kind of the the B room, but we're starting to step the game up. I got Kim Whitley coming this weekend. I've had Sherry Shepard and George Wallace and people on that stature. But I also make a place for people that are veterans who are overlooked sometimes, like people like comedian Hamburger and my man Talent, Rob Stapleton, and Rodney Perry's and people of that like who are still out here killing it, but have to get, in line with between the social media guys and the A-list people. Because whatever happens, like when the writer's strike takes place,
Mhm.
everybody that could tell two jokes that don't have a movie gig, now they want to come back and jump in the club and get in the way, but you had abandoned stand up, you was above that. And that's why I say you got to keep your chops tight. People like Tommy Davidson, who never stopped doing it. Chris Rock, who's a stand up first, that's his desire to be Chappelle and others. I don't see much personally. Well, I guess he does. Kevin Hart's still touring. He's doing international tours. So, people that get it, they stay with it, especially if you got in this as a comic and not as a person who got in comedy so that they could do movies and be famous. Yeah.
Yeah.
So because it's a
Now,
grind when you grind it. It can be a grind. The travel can be rigorous. Depending on your level of notoriety and stature, your accommodations can be subpar at times. So it's certain things like now I'm to the point where even if I don't demand a hefty salary, my accommodations got to be proper. If I'm gonna leave my comfortable home, it should be at least on par with my house.
no, that's facts. And now that you got a living, doing what you want to do in Chicago, um, you did hit the road though. If I read this correctly, you were opening for the Kings of Comedy. How was that experience like going on tour and then seeing the final project come out of the movie? How was that experience?
Man, well, the movie's a sore spot because I should have been in it, to be honest. But to be honest, I had this conversation with the producer, Walter Lathan, who produced the tour, and gave me the shot to do it. I'm very appreciative of him for that because he also had me on PDD Bad Boys and Comedy After Dark and other projects. But that film, my role should have been comprised because my job was to warm the audience for Steve Harvey twice, beginning of the show and after intermission, so that he didn't come back in. So naturally, I'm not one of the kings, but just a glimpse of what I did should have been highlighted in my personal opinion. But spilled milk can't look back. Now, come full circle, I'm out with the same guys minus Bernie. I got and Steve. DL, Sid, Earthquake, who's now a king, Bruce, John DC Curry, and the likes in this straight comedy no chaser tour. So now I'm not the opener. I've earned my way. But doing it back then, they were already well established headliners. I was a BET Comic View comic. So I was working, but my whole market was the college market. And I really milked that because I felt like it had stability and lucrative pay versus going around in New York and sleeping on couches in LA and trying to get up and get discovered. I found a living at it, and then I was promoting shows in Chicago. But to see those guys go from basically open mic and small clubs to arenas. And I watched the journey at each level because I've opened for them at different levels, theaters and things of that nature, worked with them. It showed me the possibilities. It showed me how the travel should be, the accommodations. It taught me how to work a major, huge crowd, because when you're in a club, if you got, 1,500 people or 1,000 people or 300 people, you can feel them in one way, but when you're in an arena, there's a delay. So you tell a joke on stage, you got to make it all the way up to the back of the house, and they got to see it on the jumbotron and then the laugh. So you got to pace it different. It was subtleties that I learned from that, and then just seeing them guys, jump in and out them limos and jump on a couple of private jets every once in a while. It made it feel like, all right, I've arrived to some level of respect in this business, and now I know what to shoot for.
Yeah.
And more importantly, it gave me
Oh, go ahead.
more access to Bernie. Bernie and I, you know, in Chicago, you see Bernie when you see him. But on that tour, a lot of times I would ride in the limo with him because they all had their separate cars. When you see the movie, they all in one limo. That never happened, never, period. They always had four stretch limos back then and one town car for me. So, it could tell the levels of the game, right? But sometimes when we were going from airport to airport, I would just jump in with one of them. So I would ride with Bernie sometimes and get that knowledge and that conversation, that one-on-one interaction with him and his road manager Chuck Gano, and that was an invaluable experience.
What's like one of the best moments that you had on that tour? Like something that you'll never forget?
The biggest was coming home to Chicago, to do the United Center. When you've been out, we had been out for a little while. We had done other dates, but I hadn't been to the hometown. So to come home, me and Bernie on on this big show at the house that Michael Jordan built, the place I had season tickets to and been many times, to be standing on that stage in front of that many people and my people, responding to my material on that mass scale was, it solidified me in my hometown. The other was doing Madison Square Garden, which is like the world's most famous arena. And in fact, they were so exclusive that we couldn't even record that show. There's no footage from that because they would have charged like thousands and thousands of dollars for us even to record it for our own personal usage. And then, like I said, riding around with Bernie, there were moments. There was discussion of him and Steve having friction, and there was this one particular thing that I would do as a savvy comic. If you're in a comic with 4 major headliners and you're the opening act, if you mention a topic and they have to come behind you and reiterate that topic, then you should omit that topic from your set so they don't have to say, well, like Damon said earlier, out of respect, that's one of their bits. I pulled it out. Well, Bernie was noticing that more and more I had to keep pulling bits out because it was things I was doing that Steve was doing. And so at one point he was like, he ain't gonna let you have nothing, is he? He's like, you did your music, you did that, you did this, he did that. And I'm not swinging at Steve. Steve's a good dude. He always been good to me. But that was him and Bernie's, energy that they had. And that was very memorable.
Yeah, man, that's good. That's good. One of the things that I love about comedy now is that I think like as you go into it, you're the people that you saw that probably inspired you to get into the game. You now get to have those conversations with them, and that's what I love about the most. And you guys getting your flowers. And one of the things that I love about you too, because you and Dominique, when it wasn't you, it was Dominique that was on the Tom Joyner Morning Show, and I just thought like you two were just so freaking funny. I'm like, I don't know, like I look for it. I'm like, okay, I don't know what time it was, but like after 8:30, I'm like, I know they're gonna come on. I get my laugh in. And one of the things I love about you is that you are getting honored right now. Currently on Netflix, All the Queensmen, which I looked and I watched it and I loved it, and I was so happy that you got your moment to shine. How was that when you got that call, and how was it like when you walked on stage? I was like, all right, I'm gonna be like, people are gonna like know me more from this.
Well, it's interesting because the initial project was shot back in 2019. It was right, prior to COVID, summer before COVID, and we didn't know where the project was going to land. So we didn't walk into it saying, man, this is, this is it. It's just lose yourself in the moment. You get one shot to blow. We weren't Eminem in it, but what happened, some more, and her guy, Wayne, the 4 of us have worked with them on various projects along the road. I mean, I've toured with Samoa Royal Comedy Tour for about 3 years. And so they pulled together, they were already shooting her special. And it was a brilliant move to say, well, let's do something else while we got the cameras set up and something else we could spin. So we ended up doing the project. We didn't know where it was going to land. We got, a nominal amount of pay for doing it just to see what happens. And then BET licensed it. But BET took it, and they showed it maybe one time on BET Heard about 1 a.m. And then they never showed it again. But it was only a 2-year licensing agreement. And so here's the irony. And I don't know if it was intentional or what, but they didn't show it anymore. But then they came out with a drama series with the same title. So there's a show out now called All the Queen's Men that runs on BET. And I was like, I think they buried ours because of that title. But it was to our advantage, because if they had shown it a lot, Netflix wouldn't pick it up. And to most people, you're not solidified or legit until they see you on Netflix as a comedian. So I got people I've been knowing. One of my friends, her son is in his 30s. So he's been knowing me that I do stand-up my whole career. He called his mother in the middle of the night. Man, dude, it's funny. He a real comedian, because he saw it on Netflix. So it was great. When we got the call that it was going to Netflix, and then when it finally popped up, Only drawback I have with that project is so far it's only being shown domestically. Like I have friends in Canada and I do the Cayman Islands and they can't get it yet. So hopefully they'll expand the reach of it. But it's still a feather in your cap. It earns respect amongst your peers. It gets a couple of industry eyeballs saying, okay, you're still out here. It keeps you relevant. Because Tom Joyner kept me in people's minds. And now this Netflix got us a little buzz in the industry.
Has like new fans been hitting you up and being like, "Oh my gosh, I like this new comedian," when you've been around for so many years?
I get that from social media too, like TikTok, which I'm not a big TikToker, but I've been putting most of my clips that I want to post for stand up on TikTok. I use my Instagram more for promotion as well as some humor, but TikTok is strictly the laughs. And there'll be young people that or somebody will bring to a live event and they'll tell me afterwards, the comments, you're the funniest comedian I've ever seen. I've never seen you before. I thought I was going to see Damon Williams. You get all that. So it's a beautiful thing to keep discovering or having being discovered by new people and being relevant and available to have the I guess the relevancy that people still gravitate to what I'm doing now. I haven't gotten old at it. I haven't gotten stale at it. I'm still excited about new jokes. I'm still going up with excitement each time as an opportunity for me to just enjoy what I do and also bring joy to people. And that's the attitude I have for it. A lot of guys, if you've been in this as long as I have and you're not, a king of comedy yet, they get bitter or they decide to quit or they just get stagnant, and that stagnation is very frustrating to me when I see guys that I know are brilliant, even off stage, but they're doing the same set. They've been doing it for years and they got in a comfortable place. And you can do that because the audience changes, but you're still cheating the audience of those who are your real fans who see you often. And you're cheating yourself as you being a brilliant person in this craft. You should always be expanding.
Yeah, that is true. One of the things that I love, I try to come to Chicago every year. One of the things that I love that you do is that you really like give back to younger comics and you really make a room for them. You did mention it earlier, the Riddles Comedy Club, which I really, really love. One of the things I've noticed since being in comedy is that comedy is very segregated. So to see like a black room be so powerful is very inspiring, especially for me. I want to be a club owner myself. So like the reason why I brought that up was to ask, like, do you think in comedy for us that we need more like black comedy clubs, or that we need more black bookers to give us that opportunity? Because sometimes that's just what it is. Like white bookers, they book white people not to be like offensive or racist or anything, but that's just what they know. They're gonna book their own kind or whatever, and vice versa. So do you think we need more black comedy clubs or just black bookers?
It's not so much the bookers, because a lot of times with those mainstream clubs you're speaking of, depending on who their demographic is and where they're located, they have to cater to their niche. And humor segregates itself because it's about relatability. I've sat through white comics and didn't laugh one time in a room full of people cracking up because they get his references, they get his experience, and vice versa. I've seen shows where white people and then they just don't get what we're talking about because it's not their common experience. So the goal of the comic, first of all, is to be as relatable across the board when you write your material. That is something that's a common experience for everyone: family, relationships, politics, current events, things like that. You got to incorporate some of that in there. But you start doing stuff like music, and music divides people because everybody don't listen to everything. So if I do some, like I might do a joke and include an Isley Brothers song, but if you're a white guy that grew up in Minneapolis, you probably never even heard the Isley Brothers, especially the old school Isley Brothers. So you got to, play to your audience. I do think there needs to be more black ownership because there's a very limited amount of black owners. There is a new one coming. I just saw a new comedy club. Ray DeJohn in New York is doing one. There's also the comedy club in Harlem that's black owned. Memphis has Chuckles. The Uptown in Atlanta. Here there isn't one. I would probably be the first person to do it, even though I don't want to take on the overhead and the day-to-day operations of running a club. I think it would stagnate my creativity and take some of the love out of it. Even just booking riddles can be strenuous sometimes because you got to book according to what will sell, but you also want to look out for your friends, and you also want to give up and coming people opportunity. And that mixture is a tricky. I have to do it with smoke and mirror sometimes. I might have 3 or 4 weeks of people that are not household names, and I gotta hope the audience trusts that I bring the funny for them to buy it, and sometimes they don't. So, and I don't get in this to take a loss. I'm not basically a promoter. I'm just trying to run this comedy club because the previous owner really asked me to do it as he was going through some medical issues. I think the so-called white-owned comedy clubs and white bookers, if you generate enough buzz, they could care less about what you talk about and who you talk about, as long as you fill the house. So that's why you get a lot of the social media comics with a lot of numbers that don't necessarily have the chops, taking weekends and they get in them clubs and they selling them out, and their audience gravitates to what they do. But if you just came in off the street and you don't know a particular person that has these characters online and he has these viral videos, now you sitting there like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
So it's a tricky mixture. But I don't shade the social media, so-called social media comedians, because they're working with the era that they're in. We had Def Jam, Comic View, Apollo, Comedy Central, and if you got on one of those, you was a working comic. Now you got Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, and if you go viral, you can become a working comic. And a lot of them have gravitated from the social space and the virtual space to the stage nicely. People like DC Young Fly and I say Just Hilarious and people of those along those like Country Wayne has developed his set. He wasn't doing stand-up online. He was doing, personality videos and saying things and that and the other. Even Charleston White has tried stand-up. And he's a funny dude, man. He might have a kind of jaded opinion about stuff, but he's actually funny. And I mess with him, but I can't never bring him to Riddles because the O Block and then the rest of the cats around here, they're murky there. And I ain't got that type of money for security. The FBI be like, don't even bring your ass to Chicago, dude. But I think he's funny though.
Yeah.
I mean, T.I. tried it. So comedy is here. But you got to put this work in. That's why people like Eddie Murphy don't come back. Seinfeld, he showed what the process was. He had a project called Comedian. It was on DVD. I don't know if it's available now on YouTube or virtually, but where he, after the show ended, he decided he was going to throw away his book and write a new set from scratch. And he documented the process, going across the country, going to small clubs, even though he was flying private jets and all that, but he still went and showed what it takes. And he would bomb sometime, the jokes would work or would not. And so, it takes work, effort to put this thing together. When you see somebody do an hour special, believe me, they didn't just jump up there and start doing those jokes. They've been, that set has been run around the country and tested and retested and proven to be viable. And then sometimes it still don't be what you want it to be. Because it all depends on how it goes that night. Each time with stand up, I don't give a damn how many times you did a joke. You can say one word wrong or have a pause where it don't belong, and your timing is off, and it'll throw off the joke. So that's why most people, when they shoot specials, they shoot 2 of them. They do 2 shows, and they blend the best of it as a compilation into 1 album.
Yeah. What are you? I've been starting to get like mentor from older comics in the game, and when I say older, I don't mean by physical age, I mean by like comedic years. What are you like looking for when you see like a young comic? Like, how do you know like, oh, this one got potential or this one got it? Like, what is it about young comics that you like be like, oh, I want to mentor that one or I want to help that one out?
Well, I want to help everybody, so I start there. If I have a word or a nugget or a gem, I could drop on a comic, to tell them what direction to go with something I see. But sometimes that might not even be appropriate because it might be something advice I might say, like you might cuss too much, and then that person go on to be the king of cussing. And that's what I remember. Eddie Murphy told a story that he was Rodney Dangerfield told him, man, you get to clean up your act, kid. You're gonna go nowhere with that. And then he said a couple years later, they were in a comedy club and he went in the bathroom at a urinal, and Eddie was Eddie, right? He had popped off. And he said, Rodney Dangerfield looked at him and said, who knew? What do I know? So, I have a personal taste for stand-up, even though, like there's a niche for everything, but I can see potential in a person. And if I feel like something that I like about them combines with something that I like comedically, then I know that they're on a good path. I feel like my instincts are good for that, and I'll give them, whatever tutelage I can. But each time it's trial and error. The same joke could work 10 times. That 11th time it might not.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I feel like the opportunity and the platform should be available to everybody. So if I see somebody that's really dedicated to it and they keep coming back, and or they didn't even do so well, but the next time you saw them, they fixed a little something, then I know that they're working on it. Then I really try to grab them people under my wing.
Yeah, I like that. I don't know if you mentioned this person's name earlier, but one of, I think, the best directors probably in the world, but definitely for Black people that we don't probably recognize, probably don't even know their name, is Stan Lathan. And like
Yeah.
he's always like directing like some type of like comedic creative project. Like, have you ever, being a comic, have you ever like met him? Like, what is he like, and like, do you feel like he's important to Black comedy and just comedy in general? Because like I said, his name is all over comedy projects.
Oh yeah, well, he directed my Def Jam episode. He directed my Bad Boys of Comedy episode, and he was directing an episode of Real Husbands of Hollywood, that the spoof with Kevin Hart and the guys. And so I was in LA, and Gary G. Thane Johnson, who is coming to Riddles with Dominique. Matter of fact, Dominique will be at Riddles the 15th and 16th of December, since you mentioned her, along with Gary G. Thane Johnson, and I'll be home for that. He got me in on the set, just on some extra work, just so I could be around, so I could see. So I'm sitting there as an extra, and all my buddies are in there. It's JB Smooth, Chris Rock, Chris Spencer. They all part of the episode or whatever. And they looked over there like, "Is that Damon?" I'm like, "Hey, don't worry about that. I'm just trying to be in the midst of this circumstance." And Stan was directing, and he came out the back, and he's like, "Hey, brother, where you been?" He asked me what I was doing, what I was working on, and things of that nature. But he's a very vital part of most of the prominent specials he's been a part of it. And people may not know that he's Sanaa Lathan's father. I mean, daughter. Well, father. Yeah, he's her father. But yeah, Stan is the man, dude. I mean, I know that sounds like a cliche, but Stan is that dude. Anything he touches is polished, is what you want to have when you do comedy, for sure.
Yeah, I like to study sitcoms. I'm watching the Steve Harvey show now, and I just probably like season one, I looked up and it said directed by Stan Lathan. I'm like, dang, this dude is goddamn everywhere,
No,
man.
he's king, man. He's king. He's the top of the chain on that comedy direction, for sure.
I'm a documentary buff. Like, I love documentaries. I think he should have like a documentary about him. He's so like important to just the game of comedy in general, but just definitely like Black comics and their success as well. A lot of comics, as they go on to pursue this dream, this journey, a lot of them say like they can't have like a life outside of comedy with like family and a wife and things like that. And even with like having their a spiritual life. And I feel like you have all three of those. How important is that to you, and how do you manage that too with doing comedy? Sometimes you might be out late, but now you got a family, so you might come in earlier. So how do you balance all three of those in your life?
Well, early on, and in my first marriage with my son's mom, that was first and foremost one of the reasons why I didn't pursue the West Coast or the East Coast. And I hate to say it like that, because I don't want my son to think that, he hampered me in any way. It was a very personal, conscious decision to be in my son's life and to remain married to his mother. Because A, she was a good woman, and B, I want him to have a nuclear family. I want him to have experience of growing up in a household with his father, which he did until age 14. So it's priorities, man. Now during that time, of course, I'm a young comic. I'm coming up in the streets. I'm getting attention from women, and I'm traveling and I'm doing this, that, and the other. So it was harsh for my relationship. That relationship didn't survive that, but it wasn't based on the fact that I was a comedian. It was just other factors involved. And being a comedian highlighted the fact that, you could be on some bullshit, in your relationship. And I take fault in that part of it. But you got to have balance. Of course, you want to, if you have a passion, that's your main, like comedy is my main girl. Comedy, and no disrespect to my wife, I spend more time with her than I do on stage, and she's a supporter, and she has the flexibility to travel with me and be there. So it's not like it's pulling from each other. You know what I mean? The late nights, she's tolerant of that, but it comes with the territory. I mean, because it don't really matter if a person is on some mess, that can happen at any time of the day. My wife just went to the gym. She could be with the gym. You know what I'm saying? So, vice versa. You can't never, take for granted what people do, but you got to have enough solid foundation and bond and trust and belief in each other for your relationship to last. Now, for spirituality's sake, my previous wife was into trying to get me into the church more, and that's fine. But I just got in at 2 a.m. Saturday. Even if I'm in here, come on, man, wrap this up, dude. Plus, you cannot impose your religious beliefs on another human being. So if you're sitting there false flagging and faking it for the sake of being an upstanding citizen in the community and a pillar of the church, it's still some. I like to be authentic. So I do believe in God. I like to say that as much as possible now, especially at my age. I want him to know that I testified publicly. I've always acknowledged you, but I now make it public. Now, dog, I'm in the third quarter, man. So on the just in case side, I do believe in the big guy or the big girl or the big couple or whoever is sitting at the top of the pyramid with eyeball. All that. I give my praise and thank you to the universe and the Most High. But I ain't trying to sit in that building sometimes, listen to these fallacies and these exaggerated stories that have nothing even to do with scripture. Now preachers are entertainers more than anything else. Comedy. I mean, I look at a church service like I do a comedy variety show. Like they got the opening act, they got the musical interlude, and then they got the closer. The headliner is the pastor. Sometimes the headliner is the traveling headliner. He's a guest speaker, and sometimes the guest speaker might come to town and bomb. So, that's the way I look at it. It's all produced, but people have good intention, most of them in a church service, and worship is part of belief. And so, I do that occasionally. Shouts out to Pastor Walker over here. But now our church is walking distance right here. We ain't been to church since COVID. It's crazy. Especially once they start letting you go online, you could peek in from the crib, but it's right. Like literally, my church is 77 steps from my block, and we still don't be in there. So it's lost its luster in a sense because it became to me, like I say, more of a performance. Not this particular church, but it's more performance based, and I feel like you can praise and worship on your own. But it's good to get the lessons and the messages that you get in a church service or from a pastor that is knowledgeable and uses, scripture to back up his entertainment. But it's still,
Yeah. And I was just asking, I wasn't trying to be messy. I didn't know you had a divorce. I was just asking honestly because like I just hear so many comments be like, oh, you can't do this with a family. And that's like, rather you're a comic doctor, whatever your dream is, like you could do anything, but I just haven't seen like too many men like successfully do it. And like, how do you do it? You know what I'm saying? I think just growing up with me trying to do this early on, I was just working so much that I said I wanted a relationship, but I didn't put in the time or effort for it. So I was like, how do you do all these things, be a father, achieve your dreams, and be a husband? Like, that's tough. I think that's why a lot of men don't do it, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that people feel like you can't, but it depends on who you match yourself up with. If that person is not a firm believer in what you do, then that's going to be a struggle because they're going to always be in competition with your craft. I mean, if you're doing well at it and you're paying a lot of bills, you get a lot less resistance. I tell you that much. Once you start, yeah, you know what I mean? You get it. If I'm around here doing open mics and talking about I'm out till 2 in the morning, that's one thing. If I come home and you got a house and a car and I'm out to 2 in the morning, that's a different story. So,
Yeah.
uh, so get good at it, and then everything else will fall in line. That's the thing. If you can get good and get paid at it, and you don't always have to be in the forefront or be an artist to get paid at comedy. You can learn to produce and create events. And if you do that, I did that early on. So what I did was I absorbed the fan base of the people I would book. So if nobody knows you, but they know, the headliner, and you're on the show, now you're gaining fans, especially now that you can cultivate social media contacts through being on shows with people. And you got to get out your market, even if you don't get booked in another city, venture out, reach out to a comic who has his own room and say, hey, man, I want to come to your room. You ain't got to pay me. I'm just coming to town. I want some stage time. They might say, well, I got a spot for you, or I'll take care of your hotel, or I'll give you some gas money or something while you're in town. And they may refer you to other people. You do that 2 or 3 times. A guy named Spunky Robinson out of Florida. He's come to Chicago on his own a couple of times, and I saw him. He was funny. Now I bring him back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Lawrence Owens out of the DMV, another situation where he'd been around a long time. He came, I had never seen him. He had been doing comedy 13, 14 years, but he closed out my anniversary show for my 25th anniversary after about 14, 15 dinners, and he wrecked it. And so now he has an annual date for his birthday in October. So you gotta gamble on yourself, you gotta bet on yourself, and you gotta have belief, you gotta have patience, you gotta have tenacity, you gotta be professional, you gotta be punctual, but most of all, be funny.
Yeah, very important. All right, now we're about to switch things up here before we close this out. I like to play a quick game of this or that. You got 5 seconds to answer. You can either choose this or you could either choose that. And I wasn't even trying to do the song, but all right, so here we go. First one. The color purple or what's love got to do with it?
What's love?
Okay. I love that movie.
All right, man, let me tell you, Larry Fishburne should have got 2 Oscars for that movie.
He should.
And so should Angela Bassett. But Ike in that movie, man, come on, I'll watch that movie. If it come on now with commercials, I'm still gonna watch about an hour worth of it.
Yeah,
Color
yeah.
Purple, it's beating up on all the black men are horrible, and Oprah didn't have no makeup on. I'm like, Whoopi looked like Whoopi at the time. I'm good on the slavery, segregation, sad, downtrodden black people
movies. All right, Love Jones or Candyman?
See, I never really watched the whole Candyman, so I got to go with Love Jones.
Okay.
I mean, Nia Long alone,
I know. Nia. Yeah. I keep my comments to my Michael Jordan or Sweetness.
Ooh. Hey man. That's for people that are watching, that's Walter Payton or Michael Jordan. First of all, Walter Payton was my first hero. I stood in line at Evergreen Plaza Mall, went by myself, caught the bus to get him to sign an autograph. The tenacity he played with, the sheer will that he had to be the one-man band in football versus Michael Jordan, who is my greatest sports hero because I was a season ticket holder. If we didn't see the documentary, like we didn't get to know Mike, he'd be the greatest. But his behind the scenes shit, and I'd have met him a couple of times. He was kind of bogus on one particular occasion. Seriously, I was at, and so I'm gonna go with damn, that's tough. I'm gonna go Walter Payton. I wear a Walter Payton jersey every time I go to Bears games. He's my first hero, and he passed away, and so that gives you an extra sympathy vote. But Jordan is the GOAT. But one time I was at his wife. I was friends with his wife, Juanita, and it was her birthday, and they were at this. They had a like a rooftop condo, penthouse or whatever, and we were all out on the deck. And Mike was coming down these stairs of the deck, and he stumbled. Right, and when he stumbled, I put my hand as small as his back, and I called him. I don't care what nobody say. You might think I be making up these stories. I've been around a lot of celebrity shit, right? So I called him, and he said, "Oh, I wasn't about to fall. I'm graceful." And he didn't say thank you. He was like, "You ain't have to catch me. I had it." No, dude, you stumbled and damn near broke your shit. and I caught you. So that graceful move, man. So now I understood what everybody went through. You know, he's so competitive and so, you know, that was off putting, man. So I'm gonna go with Walter.
Man, that's funny. We gotta put that. We gotta put that somewhere. I'll call Michael. We gotta handle this
I
somewhere.
did, man. I had your back, Mike. Caught you in the small of your back. You would have probably tore your ACL because you was retired by then. Come on, man. Say
Uh,
thank you next time.
all right. This next one, I'm a butcher the name because I've only had it one time when I was in Chicago. Dang, I'm gonna ask you, what's that pizza place that start with a G?
Giordano.
Giordano's or Harold's Chicken Shack?
Harold's.
Okay.
Grew
Okay.
up on Harold's. I tried to open a Harold's, actually. I was a franchise owner of a Subway, but first I was going to open a Harold's. Harold's evokes memories of my childhood. I didn't really discover deep dish pizza or Giordano's until I was nearly an adult.
Oh, okay. All right, last one. Donnie Hathaway or Earth, Wind, and Fire?
Earth, Wind, and Fire, man. Just the magnitude. That's one of the greatest bands in the history of bands. But Donny Hathaway, you know, he was cut short by himself with his mental situation and suicide. But you know, this Christmas and you know the ghetto and things of that nature,
Yeah.
he got classics, but nothing hits like Earth, Wind, and Fire.
True. All right, cool. We wrapped that up. All right, we about to wrap this up. Before we get out of here though, who is on your Mount Rushmore for comedians?
That's terrible. I hate that question. But I tell you, one and two are Richard and
Okay.
Eddie, right out the gate. Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy. Um, you know, I like Chris Rock. I like his work ethic. He's still in the clubs doing his thing. He has some groundbreaking epic specials. Chappelle, of course, and there's only four heads on the mountain, and that would make me have to exclude Bernie. You know, and
Yeah.
I can't do that from Chicago. So, you know, that's when it gets tricky. Then, you know, to be honest, his impact has been major. So Kevin Hart, you know, he's not one of my guys that I would go to for like he don't have quotable jokes. But, you know, so I gotta go like this. Ugh. Richard Pryor first and foremost. Eddie Murphy. Okay. Then I could throw y'all for a loop and throw in George Carlin. Because George Carlin has 11 1-hour specials. See, then there's Dick Gregory because of what he did in the industry, you know. So, and Paul Mooney, who was a writer for Richard and Eddie, you know what I
Yeah.
mean. So I hate that question. So I'm gonna go me, Richard and Eddie, because I've become my favorite comedian lately, man. I'm telling you, y'all gonna see some things in the next year or two. I'm on fire. You know, I ain't
Yeah.
saying I'm, you know, but yeah, I'm about to hit that mountaintop. But hypothetically, industry wise, out there in the world is Eddie and Richard first, and you could throw in anybody else between Chris Rock, Chappelle, Carlin, Rodney. I like Rodney Dangerfield. You know,
Yeah.
the pace that he came with. You know, so it ain't got to be all of the black ones. But then in my contemporary status right now, you know, it's people like I'll leave that alone because then they all get mad. It's too many.
Damon, what is some words of encouragement that you can give to any comedian that's listening to this right now?
Be patient, keep going. So I had a motto of don't stop and don't quit, because you could be like I've been in this shit 30 years, right? And I still haven't peaked, in my opinion. I know there's greater for me coming. And that's because I stayed in it. And it would never happen if I quit. So don't stop, don't quit. Live your life in blinders. Don't compare yourself to anybody else's journey. Enjoy the moments along the way. Have these type of stories that you and I are having right now, because that's what's going to mean the most. And once you get to success, I've seen successful people get to a point where they're no longer happy with the situation, not unhappy. I give you an example. So Sid the Entertainer is one of my good friends in this business. I've had major exposure to him along every step of his career. So after the Kings of Comedy, he decided to do Cedric the Entertainer review and produce a tour and present us other comedians. But at one point, we were all in the car. We had a situation where a flight delayed. So instead of flying, we all jumped in a limo. And we telling these stories about somebody just got stolen on stage, or somebody didn't get paid and they tried to pay him with chicken wings, and said like, see, this is the thing I miss about the game, because he's already gotten there. But the journey and the fun and the green room and the bogus promoters and all that along the way is the meat of the game. And so he said, man, now he get with the Kings. He said, when I was with them cats, all we could do is sit around and look at each other and say, are we rich or what? Wasn't no struggle in it, wasn't no humor in it. It's just we just four rich dudes out here balling. But he's back on tour, and I'm on tour with them uh, for 4 more dates. I've done 2 already with the Straight Jokes No Chaser, and the lineup kind of varies. Lunel has a date. Mike Epps is on one of the dates. DC Curry's on a couple of them. Bruce on a couple of them. But the core is DL, Sid, and Earthquake, and I'm on all of those. And it's December 28th. I don't know when it's gonna run. Y'all be looking back at this or not, but I'm telling people right now, it's New Year's Eve week, so it's December 28th through the 31st, and the 31st is back at the United Center, home in Chicago. So I've come full circle, and I'm gonna tear that thing to pieces. Trust me.
David, tell people.
I'm jumping on that Mount Rushmore after that one. Watch.
David, tell people why they should listen to Comedians in Bed podcast.
Because it gives you insight behind the comic. You know what I mean? And we all see our jokes, but you don't know our lives. You don't know our stories. You don't know our struggles. You don't know our triumphs. You don't know our relationships. And so this is an insightful way. And you always want to know what it's like to hang with comedians. I know I have. And sometimes comedians ain't always on, and we ain't always funny. So it gives us a chance to, display the other side of us behind the scenes, off stage, in bed.
Damon, tell people where they can find you at, man.
Hey, you can see me when you look at me. How about that? That was my grandmother saying, I see you when I look at you. DamonWilliamsComedy.com, man. Everything's on there, all my links. I'm mostly on Instagram the most, which is Damon Williams Comedy. I got an X page, which was Twitter. That's Damon Williams. Damon Williams Comedy on Threads. And like I said, if you want to get some laughs, check out my TikTok, also Damon Williams Comedy. So coming to your city. If I haven't come, leave a comment in one of my posts, and I'll make sure I find a way to get there, because I want to touch all the stages. I want to go to Boise, Idaho. I want to go to North Dakota. So it's all, I want to touch all that. So just look for me online or find me here.
That's what I love to hear, man. If you want to catch next week's episode, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel at TYE Comedy. If you want some more clips of this episode or any past episodes, be sure to follow us on IG at Comedians in Bed Podcast. We drop every Tuesday at 11 a.m. live episode. But, man, we had a wonderful conversation here with Damon Williams here today, man. Make sure you follow him on everything social. Damon, once again, man, we thank you for joining us today. We'll see you guys next week.
Hey, man, you do a great job at this, and keep it going.